Okay, so let's move
Portraits
on
of His
to
Children.
Portraits of His Children. This is 1986. I think this relates to remembering Melody in a few ways. One, it's kind of like a horror type story, but two, it shows like what authors are willing to do, draw upon their past and in other people's past sometimes and use it in their stories. Like maybe like a Melody is based on someone he knew indirectly, and maybe it wasn't right to go in this much detail. That's like hard to find out what the message of this story is, but let's do lemon cakes.
Yeah, I would say probably somewhere 3.5 to 4 range for me. Again, like it's not something that I really have a good time reading, which makes it really hard for me to do lemon cakes because that's sort of my go-to a lot of the time. But it's also, obviously not a 1. So, but yeah, so somewhere 3.54 maybe.
I give it like a 4.25-ish. Also not super enjoyable to read. I didn't hate the guy like I hated Melody. But it did feel really, it was just such a compelling story that even though it wasn't super enjoyable, I wouldn't want to read it a bunch of times. It definitely hooked you, and I kind of just continued to think about it after rereading. So good story.
Yeah, I kind of want to give it like a 4.5, but I'll give it a 4. It's just I love stories that have a twist to an end, a twisted, where there's a twist at the ending. But I don't like stories that kind of make me feel that I got tricked, and I kind of feel like it was like a haha, you didn't pick up on this till the very end, and I didn't like that hold. Like I think it would have been a much more powerful story if it didn't have that last little package in the mail. But I just it dealt with some just such really tough stuff, and I don't know if it was the edition I was reading, but I had trouble figuring out what was a flashback and what was the dreams flashback and present, because the whole time I thought he had raped his daughter, and I was like, why the hell have I drawn this out so long? Because he says that in the beginning, like you raped me, and then it takes 25 pages where you understand, oh, okay, I get what happened. But yeah, I was waiting for this like awful, I don't know, Cormac McCarthy like ugh, and it didn't happen, and I was glad for that. But yeah, I'll give it a 4.
I'd give it like a 4.5, just because it's really hard to stop reading. Because even though I haven't reread it in a long time, it's very, very uncomfortable. But or maybe a 4.25. My main issue with it is that like the ending is sort of baffling in a way that like I respect, but that is like, yeah, like Greg said, that is kind of a little off-putting. You feel a little bit like tricked, I guess. But I really like it, and I like how it sort of captures this like something about being a writer, I think, that is interesting. And it's scary at points.
Yeah. I felt like the story left me with more questions than answers at the end of it, but it still is a great story, and it's written from a very heartfelt but just a dark place.
Yeah, it reminds me most strongly of his. What's the name of the chess one?
Oh,
Unsound Variations.
Variations. It reminds me really strongly of that, but not really of any of his horror short stories.
I definitely did feel like, Greg, you were saying that the end of that section where she's like, you raped me, it felt a little bit almost manipulative that he left that for so long, and then she's crawling into bed with him, and it's just like,
right. I literally kept glancing down to like see if that was going to be, not that I wanted, I just was like,
it's going to be Princess and the Queen kind of stuff here.
Yeah, it kind of. I felt like I would have enjoyed the story more if that just line wasn't there. It would have been just as emotionally powerful if she's yelling that at him at the end, where you don't have 25 pages where you think you're supposed to hate the guy.
Actually, for whatever reason, like I never assumed that he'd actually raped her.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. I don't think I did either, or at least I don't know. To me, like the line was sort of like we'll get to this later, sort of a line. Like so I was never like what's going on? Explain what's happening. Like that didn't happen. I was always
even if you don't believe it, it's there though. It's out there.
Sure. I mean, I guess, but it looked like I don't know. To me, it felt like a teaser trailer line, like a line that was obviously, something I wasn't necessarily meant to understand the fullness of it. Like I was supposed to, it was gonna come later, and so it didn't irritate me that it did come later. I don't know.
Television has trained me well to sort of like hear a line like that and then wait for after the commercial break, because it's Yeah.
Mm.
Sorry, that was
Yeah,
incorrect.
no, but I know what you mean. I had that same feeling.
I wish that I had not instantly bought into it. Just immediately suspicious. Like, yeah, it's a fiction story, but this shit happens all the time.
Yeah, I'd give it 4.25. A solid story, only low. That's not even low, but just compared to other stories, it's not a 5. But it's an important story where George shares his stuff, and as he says, the price we writers pay when we mine our dreams and fears and memories. And this story, just as a backdrop, it won the Nebula and lost the Hugo in 1986. So yeah, let's jump into its spoiler-full chat.
I mean, do you know if this was ever adapted
Hmm.
for TV at all? For some reason, the first time I read it, it just felt familiar. Like, have I seen this somewhere?
Hmm.
I'm not sure what it's reminding me of, but something about the pictures or the paintings just seemed very familiar.
Yeah, it doesn't say. I don't think it has been, but like most of his works, it could be.
It would be really good adapted, I think.
Yeah.
I think it'd be pretty easy to get the point across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he should just talk to like current graphic novels people, and because he
Yeah,
did
let's
Sand
give him,
Kings and it's
let's
so
give him
old.
one more project to
No, he doesn't have to do anything. He just sell it, right? He doesn't have to do it. Like,
I know.
But like he did Sand Kings, but that's so long ago, and it's the old style '80s graphics. Now things are a lot different now. It's a much more established medium, and they could just reproduce all his works.
Yeah.
Just like Ice Dragon, I guess. There you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
just can I ask, like, are you writers in your personal? I mean, I know you write for different stuff, but are any of you trying to become like authors or writers and professionally? Because I felt like this story was written for writers, and I'm a reader 100%. You know, I'm not trying to write the great American novel. I just love reading. I've never really, I mean, I keep a journal, but I've never wanted to be a writer. And I felt like this is one of those stories that really would pack more of a punch if you were a writer, because it goes into the whole how important your creations are compared to your actual children and everything. But I didn't know if any of you got more out of it because you were particularly into that or going for that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I've never been a writer or anything like that, but I don't know. I understand like the way in which like sometimes the way where like when he's fighting, he's trying to defend it by explaining like the way he knows he did something wrong, but is getting prickly because like of an almost legalistic argument, is something that sort of like resonated with me.
Yeah, I did not feel. I thought he was a really great character. Like his fights with his wife and his fights with his daughter. Like he was being a dick, but he had valid points, and it was just too bad that he didn't have a little bit more empathy and couldn't go about expressing himself better. Because of course it's important, you know, your career, and I had a bit of sympathy for him.
Yeah. To the extent that I had real problems with him, it was um I feel like he wasn't maybe, well, and that's not necessarily true. What I was going to say was that he wasn't maybe as good at cognitive dissonance as he could have been. Like sort of like he can't hold in his head the idea that yes, you've got to write and you've got to, you know, there are things that you have to write, but also even though you have to, you're still bad and wrong for doing it. Like for me, like that's sort of the key thing that he was missing, was just that, like, yeah, I understand that you had to, but you should also, you know, be able to acknowledge that what you did was wrong at the same time. But
Yeah, it shouldn't take hauntings to get you to
yeah,
acceptance.
A couple of ways this guy kind of ties into George is he lives in an area near the steamer captains, and we know that George has written about them, and he's always been interested in steamer captain history.
from the same background as a kid too.
Yeah,
and obviously he's a writer.
And then we talked about how, like you said, you had on-sound variation vibes. I think, especially in terms of the failed marriage, because they talk about that in on-sound variations and here as well. And I think, I mean, like George might have drawn upon his first marriage, and maybe like kind of a retrospective in what he might have done wrong in it.
Yeah.
Like this being too dedicated to writing.
I always forget they were actually married.
Yeah.
It definitely did feel really personal.
I will say, I mean, and I don't have kids, so I don't know, but like I have trouble believing that any father could publish this. And I mean, what I mean, sorry, not the short story, but could publish the novel that Cantling writes.
The
You
last.
mean the last one?
Yeah, especially with the title he gave it.
Yeah,
Why-
and the
Really
dedication,
terrible.
right? He gives a dedication to his daughter to like
Yeah,
out her basically.
Yeah,
Like,
to my
yeah.
daughter who was raped.
Yeah, that's almost the one part that took me out of it, like the ghosts or the haunting and the creepy portraits I could accept, but it seemed like I didn't understand how he was actually defending it. Like you can see where she's coming from, but it seemed like
Oh.
he's genuinely like, what are you talking about? I wrote this for you. Why don't you? It just didn't make, like you did say, like it doesn't really hold water in that sense. I hope not, but
Yeah, like it's
He's in denial, and that's why this whole thing is in his head. Like it's its own
he
consciousness
is
breaking free.
he is in denial, and like you can see that, like especially with the way the story ends. But it's just like, I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, like, maybe what do I know? And like, I'm not a writer, so I don't know like what your relationship is like with writing. But like, I can see him being compelled to write the story down.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
cannot see him taking it to a publisher.
Yeah.
He's a sure, he hadn't been able to write for years and he needed to get the writer's block out, but he didn't need to publish this. He just needed to.
Well, and it's surprising that someone along the way, editor or something, wouldn't have, because I'm sure they all knew, like somebody wouldn't have pointed out, hey, do you really think this is the best idea?
Yeah, and especially like he mentions he's been friends with his editor for years. Like he showed him the children's things at some point when he was a kid. Like really, like he didn't.
we also do know
Yeah.
that every hint is that he's just so I don't know if self-centered is the right word, but like he's really, yeah, I guess it is. He puts himself before everything, before his family, before his children. That
Mhm.
even from before, naming the character instead of his child Edward, and so it does make sense that eventually he might have cared about his daughter, but he cared that much more about himself, and I guess that makes sense. But still, it's just a pretty dicky thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just like. It
Well-
makes sense, I guess, as a story. It's like it's an exception. What's the word? It's artistic license, but it pushes me out of the story because I can't picture a man who would do that being someone his daughter would trust at all.
I mean, I kind of think that the way he wound up writing it is like you said, sort of had to get it out kind of a thing. But then I sort of think of it the same way as I do like the bedtime stories, like that there's part of him that's, really cold and analytical and just is looking at this story and is like, this is good. This is good writing, and there's only one thing to do with good writing, which is publish it, sort of a
Yeah,
thing.
it would be
That's kind of the
hard
way I
if
feel
you,
about it.
yeah, if you'd produced something, because it went on to be like number one. If you produce something really great, it would be hard not to share it, especially if that's what your whole career and life is wrapped up in. But it's just shitty beyond reason.
Yeah. But so based on that, based on like, him looking at something that's, sort of maybe his magnum opus or whatever and being like, unable to turn away from his career and from all of that sort of stuff and being, I have to, it's what I have to do. It's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of his last chance there too, when Michelle came and was honest with him and told him like it was his last chance to either side with his daughter or side with his career.
Yeah.
And he went with the career.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Story choice. The title is just so.
Ugh.
I don't remember what the title was.
Show me where it hurts.
That's pretty bad.
And also, there's a line where they're yelling, where he's like, he's a symbol, and she's like, he's the man who raped me. He's not a symbol. And he like still tries to answer that, and I'm just like, I can't even.
Well, that's just like he's feeling so bad that he can't acknowledge at all, what he did or whatever.
Because if he does, it'll.
It'll wreck him, and he can't.
And he does acknowledge it later. I mean, like when he thinks of that. I'm gonna go back. Let's go through in order, if that's okay. Let's go back to start with Edward Donahue, and also because I want to try to compare and see if certain stories match George's books. So I don't know about the first one. I don't know if the first one matches what he's done before, but it's interesting how when Edward Donahue shows up, he's first like happy to see him. Well, once he gets over the crazy part, he's happy to see him. But then the guy starts telling him some harsh truths. How he I'm who you wanted to be, not who you were, and you stole it from your friends' lives. You were a loser, and you just copied them to create me, kind of thing.
The Edward kind of reminded me of Armageddon Rag, just his vibe in the flashbacks from that.
So I would say like the book Armageddon Rag Match is one of the later books that crashed horribly. Like that's supposed to be like related to that. If this is written at the right time too, right? Armageddon Rag was before 86, right? So I don't know what work it matched. I don't know that it has to match it directly, but and based off the Edward thing, you get that flashback where you see how they were trying to name the child, and he wants to name the character Edward, and the wife wants to name their son if it's a son.
He doesn't want to name the character Edward. I mean, the character is already named Edward.
Already been Edward, and to him is real, right? The characters are real to the.
Yeah, I kind of had to side with him on that one.
Really?
Yeah, but like she's clearly not a good person for him to be married to, I guess.
Yeah, no
Not a
kidding.
good match for each other. Yeah.
Not a good
No.
match, no.
At the same time, like his argument with her is absolutely unacceptable.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
I don't understand that argument from either side. Like, both of them are crazy people. Like,
Yeah.
I was just like, what in the hell is wrong with both of you? Like, you're so attached to the name Edward that you're like, no, it can't be for the book. It's for our child. Like,
So you don't have to do Lawrence. It's like how a million other names you can
yeah,
do. Like,
exactly. Like that
Yeah.
argument from both sides, I was just like,
Yeah.
I could not sympathize with either person.
Also, because like what? Where do you think she got the idea for the name? She
It's
got
from
it
him, right? Yeah. She did. It's not like she came into the marriage and had the idea of Edward.
No, she's challenging him with it.
Yeah, it's like a symbol basically. It's like a fighting point. It's not really the name. It's just she wants to get from him that the child's more important, and he's not giving that to her. But it's just it's dumb.
Also, like he's crazy. They can have the same name.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. She
Lots
can
of
have it for
people
her
have been
reasons, and he
named
can have it for
Edward.
her reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's not exactly like a unique name or anything that everybody's gonna be like,
Just name one of them Ned.
Also, like, I don't know if he was trying to be creepy in the sense that when his characters started calling him Dad and Daddy, like it just added another level of creepiness to it, because I know that he does have the line of like how you come from my brain, not my sperm, so you're more me than my children. But it just came across as creepy to me, just the way that they called him Daddy, and especially the second one, the daughter. But I did get a little like Christmas Carol vibe before they even mentioned it. I wrote like Christmas Carol with a question mark, and then he goes, "This ain't no fucking Christmas Carol, man, and I sure ain't no Ghost of Christmas Past." I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't as subtle as I thought I was being.
And then I like how it said like this is not in character. You would have never read it. It's like no, I saw the movie. That fits the character. That was just like inconsistent with
that was
the whole
funny.
delusion.
Can you imagine from like their point of view, like you're sitting down speaking to someone who knows literally everything that's in your head? Like that's creepy also.
Yeah. Sissy's so much creepier though.
Yeah. Let's move on. Is Sissy the next one that comes? Yeah, and it skips over his other works because they weren't like real or that successful. It jumps to Sissy.
She's like this 18-year-old honeypot, I guess. From what's her role in the story she was in?
She was like his love interest for one, because the wife, that was the book that his wife was like everyone knows this is me. You really you're in love with Sissy.
Oh yeah, because the husband left
a nagging
the
wife or something in the book. Yeah.
Now that fight was toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Black Roses is what
that's
the editor changed it to Black Roses.
Yeah, he wanted to call it Dead Flowers.
But it was big, and it paid. They were finally able to afford a down payment on the house, transfer Michelle to a private school in the braces, and then he invested the money. But Helen hated the book. She was happy when it went off the best thing, and she don't like being married to a pornographer.
Well, like she's also awful. Like that's the worst way she could have made that argument.
Yeah.
Like it's almost designed to make you at least for me. Like I don't sympathize with him because he clearly because everything she says is true. He does write about his cow of a wife.
Yeah.
It's perfect 18-year-old dream girl, which is gross also because he's like an adult.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the way she lands this criticism of him is by calling him a pornographer. Like really, you're not going to criticize him for the harm he's caused you or for fantasizing about leaving you. He decides to do it by just I don't know. It's a baffling argument.
Yeah, it definitely gives him a better comeback. Whereas if she'd focused on the cruel and cutting things he was saying about the wife character in the book and how her friends were, oh, you poor thing, your husband, wrote this all and obviously it's about you. If she had focused on that, she would have at least had he would have had no recourse. But
Yeah.
for her to just say, "Oh, you're a dirty old man," sex is an important part of life. That's actually true. So.
Yeah. But when he says that, and then she's like, "I'm not a prude. Don't dare me. You call me a prude." It reminds me of like Game of Thrones, where
Yeah.
like I would say the same thing when I complain about Game of Thrones going over the top. It's like, I'm not a prude. You're the guys that are going over the top with this crap, just trying to sell it.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if your copy of this has this real quick before we go into the next one, but have you read the little speech he gives? This novel won the Nebula, or when he won the Nebula Award, he said
there was a controversy over whether it should even be there. You mean?
It's at the top of my PDF version of this, and it's I don't know when he said this, but the truth of it is, writers do have peculiar relationships with their characters. They are children in more senses than one. They are born of our imaginations, carry much of our selves in them, and embody whatever dreams we dream of immortality. I cannot claim to be an exception. Abner Marsh and Joshua York, Sandy and Maggie and Froggy, Val One-Wing and half-faced Brett and Braith, Kenny with his monkey, poor wasted melody, the improved model Melantha Jurl, and the callous Simon Cress, and of course my lost Leah. When I type, I can see their faces. This is a writer's story, yes, and more true than some of us would care to admit. Yeah, which I really like as an introduction, but
it definitely goes. It just reinforces the vibe of this story, I guess. That you have to, a successful writer, I don't know how you could be successful if you did not care to that level and didn't put that degree of yourself into what you were doing.
It's a two-way street where you obviously draw from life for your work, but it goes backwards where your work will then bleed back into your life and it will affect the people around you. And this is an extreme example of that, but like I kind of try to think of like E.L. James, who wrote 50 Shades of Grey a couple years ago, where all of a sudden it's the #1 book. Grandmas are reading it, 15-year-olds are reading it. Like, how does her husband feel about this? Like, I'm actually interested.
Yeah.
This kind of made me think of that. Like, I'm sure he's not angry that she's making millions and millions of dollars, but it might be a little emasculating for him.
Yeah.
Or not?
I'll take the millions.
That book made so much money that at one point Random House literally just cut $5,000 checks to every single employee, from like janitors to editors. They just gave everybody $5,000 because they didn't think they could make that much money.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this story in particular, like it, because we always look at George's life and try to make comparisons, which always feels a little bit weird. But I feel like this kind of justifies it. Like, if we want to understand the work, it's okay to look at the guy's life. And
he's really open about how much he pulls from his own life, which I like. I think that's and he doesn't overdo it. Like, he doesn't always write about writers.
Yeah, but if we're done with Sissy, I guess, or I mean, like he
Just
has
one
a whole
little thing about her is I was a little annoyed that he got his like awesome night of passion. Like, he started off kind of afraid, but the whole confrontation with the other two sons were really supposedly eye-opening for him and kind of laying bare his soul.
Yes.
And she is just like pure pleasure. And I was like, well, that's not fair.
I sort of thought that one was that it's all about him seeing something, and like I don't think he'd ever admitted that what his wife said was true about Sissy until here.
Yeah,
I don't think he
that's what I
admitted
think,
to himself or to anyone else that like he was in love with her and that like she was his fantasy, which is especially weird because obviously she's a fantasy.
But also, we don't, at this point, he's not sure 100% if this is actually happening, because he's like, oh, F it, I'll just go with it. It's really not until the third guy visits where he like prepares and he's like, okay, he's coming. But this also all takes away from it, because I don't know if I just missed it, or at the end, I mean, we're allowed to talk about the ending, right?
Yeah.
Order. Are we under the impression that he paid the guy to make the portraits and none of this was actually happening, or were these people actually visiting him? It wasn't just in his head.
I always got the impression that after his daughter left, he sort of cracks.
Yes.
He kind of split personality orders these paintings because he's decided he's done with his real kid and he wants just these guys.
To replace the painting that was damaged.
Oh no, I get that. But like, do you think he's actually like picturing this stuff happening, or he's just having a conversation with himself?
It's split personality. They're all parts of himself. I think he's
I think there's no fantasy in this actual story, and he talks about
that was my big thing. It was like, well, okay, then why is this a fantasy story? It's just a dark.
Well, then he argues that at the start. He's like, well, it doesn't matter. It's just like about struggles of the human heart. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. What is it he says to himself when he finds the bottle? He says like, he'd experienced some sort of insane, drunken, somnambulist episode. I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
I think that's the whole story.
Yeah.
See, that's just I have more questions, and it's a great story, but like I don't like not knowing because short stories are supposed to wrap up. I mean, it's supposed to have not supposed. I don't like to say supposed to.
Yeah.
But I think the better ones do wrap up well, and this one just tricked me. I don't like being tricked.
But he says that when it was nominated for both those awards, there's debate about whether it should be eligible. But
Yeah.
I think he left it open enough so he could get the
Either.
awards.
Also, I'm sorry to say I got to run.
Okay.
We've talked a little about Nicole, I guess, so I don't feel bad. Enjoy Barry Layton without me. I'll see you guys later.
Thanks for joining us.
Take
Yeah.
Bye, man.
Bye.
See you later.
Yeah.
Cool.
it easy.
Let me know what we decide for next week.
Okay, well we're not doing next week because
Yeah.
Oh, good. We get a week with no assignments.
no homework, no reading assignments for a week. Okay, so we were talking about I think just overall I think because we find out where the source of the paintings is and it's just like he hired someone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any actual fantasy stuff going on. It's
I was a little unclear as to, he probably did that and, ordered the portraits and didn't remember them. But I also thought, well, did Michelle order those and send him the tab? And I also wondered, if she had painted them, because it sounded like, I'm clearly it wasn't, because it was a bill from the artist and it didn't say like it was a bill from Michelle. But I just wondered if anonymously she had created these for him as a, I don't know. I don't think she would ever forgive him. In fact, I don't think she did, just because I think she's smart enough to be done with him. But I did have that thought, like maybe it was him, but maybe it was her.
He did say it was like the best work she ever did. So if it was her, it was really stretching. Like it was like it probably was a better artist than her. When you got the first one, it's like this is the best she's ever done in terms of quality.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know. I'm not completely certain. I mean, I'm sort of willing to go with any of 3 or 4 different explanations. But I mean, there's other things, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I felt like he recognized the way they were addressed, and the fact that he got them, one day and then the next day and then the next day, and I mean, that's really weird. I mean, that's weird.
Yeah, he did
period.
keep mentioning the handwriting that he recognized, and I think we automatically assumed that it was Nicole. Nicole. Who am I talking about? Michelle. Sorry. Too many stories. But that is another level that it was probably his handwriting.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. So you think when you say his, you mean the author?
Yeah,
Okay.
Cantling.
So in that case, you think he already had them and then he addressed them and put them on his porch?
Oh, that's another level. I just think, what is he just walking outside, like plopping a box down, going inside, or like ringing his doorbell and then coming around the house?
Because earlier he was like, I always tell them to like ring me when they
Yeah.
bring them, but they just keep leaving them there. Maybe it's because he himself is putting them in.
Yeah.
Putting them there.
Putting on a UPS uniform, throwing it in the room.
Because it matches the last story as well. It kind of hints like that. Yeah, it's funny. You know what else matches the last story? I mean, just right after the Sissy encounter, he wakes up and he makes blueberry pancakes. And then in the Remembering Melodies, it's always like, oh, you always loved blueberry pancakes and stuff. So maybe George likes blueberry pancakes.
That's what I just had for lunch.
All right, so the third encounter is with who is it with? It's with Barry.
Barry Layton. He was my favorite. Like, he's the one I want to hang out with, even though he's got his.
And he works in a newspaper room and that kind of stuff. With George himself, he did as well, right? That's sort of the journalism. So what does he say? Oh, is this the failure book? This is the book that's a big failure. He thought it was going to be his best one, and then no one read it. So
Yeah,
I think
this is the book that he thinks was his best work, but of course that could have been.
Yeah, so it ties Armageddon rag in that failure,
right?
Because afterwards his career was in shambles for a while. And I think he was fighting with his editor in the story. He was trying to do this, and the editor wanted this. He's like, no, I want to do this thing, and then nobody wanted it.
I did think it was interesting that each progressive night he felt like the first night after the first encounter, he wakes up the next morning and he makes this big breakfast and he blah blah blah, and then after the second one he kind of just goes through the motions, and then after this encounter he's just like
he throws his breakfast up, right?
Yeah.
Let's see, this is what's his main reveal? He's talking about how he doesn't remember his daughter's birthday. You were a lousy husband, miserable father.
he was. This was where they started making reference to the last book, right? And he's like, I remember what your little secret words to her were. The whole "show me where it hurts" thing.
He doesn't remember important dates. He remembers it based off his books, not the
Right.
people.
Yeah, that was I was gonna say. How he basically all his important things. It's what I was writing at the time, and he even calls him out. He's like, "That's an interesting system of dating you've got there. You ought to put an account there."
Yeah. And then the stories for Michelle, where he was thinking about publishing, that was like one of his motives for doing them.
Mm-hmm.
And he hates to be interrupted when he writes. That's like a big thing. He likes to. He reads her, like he read Michelle books, and it's like all the books you wanted to reread anyways. It's like everything he does, it's like some motive related to himself.
Yeah, that just goes to the theme of how inherently selfish and self-centered he is. But he is part of. I understand it because he probably knows that deep down, but he does try to do something good along with the bad. So I don't think Stannis would like him by any means, but yeah, I can see where he's coming from.
So then we get to the tough part to read in the story is when he finds out about his daughter was raped.
Like I'm trying to think of a book or a story that I've read that had. I mean, it's just anytime you're dealing with a subject, it's going to be dark, but just the way it's handled.
Yeah.
Just with her crawling into bed with him, and it's throwing back to when she was a child, and he would protect her. It's just this. It's maybe one of the most powerful things I've ever read. Like I'm just trying to think of a single scene that I can't. I mean, I'm sure there is something, but it's definitely up there. And this is another. I keep reading these stories, and I'm angry that I haven't found out about them until now. But.
So he does the right thing by taking her in and trying to help her.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting that he finally.
Yeah.
When she really, really needed him, he finally was there and, moved his whole life. And, just you kind of wonder if she had never gotten herself back and kind of gotten back on her feet, would he have been happy to just not write and just take care of her for the rest of his life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing, and just in terms of him finally doing the right thing, is that he is obviously looking at his past. I mean, throughout the story, he's looking at his past through a whole lot of guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's not entirely clear what kind of father he really was prior to that either. Like, he may have been, perfectly, he didn't. There was certainly nothing that he did that seemed to be really bad, and I mean, he did. Didn't seem to be, abusive or neglectful or anything like that. Like he missed some, dance recitals or whatever it was. But I don't know necessarily that I think that he was a bad father previously.
Yeah, a little distant, but still
Yeah, maybe a little
loving. I mean, he
distant,
did
but
change
yeah.
diapers.
Yeah. Well, she gave him that portrait. I mean, like
Yeah,
they weren't horrible
exactly. Yeah.
status before. They were just a bit distant, but they were okay. And then
Yeah.
better than with his wife. So.
Mm.
Yeah, and then so Leighton saying it was a far, far better thing you did there you'd ever done. If only you'd stopped there and keep going with the writing.
Mm-hmm.
So then he's worried after like that the character that he writes about in the story is going to show up.
Yeah, I thought that's kind of where it was going to be this whole horror ending where like the rapist was going to show up and kill him or something like that.
Yeah.
It was almost darker what actually happened.
Yeah.
It was interesting that he didn't figure out the connection. Like he just thought, okay, it's going to be somebody from that last book, and it's clearly this whole process is just to torture me, so it must be the killer or rapist, I guess. But it's actually the portraits are the characters that he is closest to, that he loves the most. And in the meantime, before he figured that out, he kind of went crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we get the flashback to Michelle, which I guess we talked about, but just the title, "Show Me Where It Hurts."
It's also just a terrible
Yeah,
title.
I was gonna say he
I
needs
wouldn't pick that up
he
and
needs
say,
the
"Oh,
Dead
what's this?"
Roses editor to come in and like
Yeah. Come up with a different
yeah.
one. Yeah. It wouldn't pass in today's world, that kind of title.
Well, not in the self-published world, yes. Not in the regular world. There are some pretty bad titles out there. A lot involving dinosaurs and women that I won't name.
Well, I'm kind of intrigued now.
Yeah, she comes and she's like, "You knew, you bastards. You knew that what you're doing. Publish it for millions of people."
Yeah, and it's just more of a double punch because she's finally over it.
Yeah.
She's back getting her life, and then she has to walk down the street and see bookstore shelves
Yeah.
full of it, which it's just another.
Yeah, and then also the blame game that's in there as well, right? That's
oh, she's getting pity from strangers now.
No, but I mean not even that. But I mean like the way the character's written, it's just like she's so stupid to be living there and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like just the blame thing is
Yeah.
coming as well, which is just horrible.
She definitely had, I think she was pretty justified in cutting ties.
Yeah.
I mean, through their whole life of him being, not a terrible dad, not great. It's just unforgivable.
Yeah.
Because to be that blind, to think, oh, here's a good idea, I'm going to publish this.
Yeah, and this is the line "Show me what hurts" is the monster's line, and so like it's the dad who's the monster.
Did you guys think that, or Michael, did you just say that you were expecting some horror ending with the guy? Like I thought it was a cool kind of not trick, but just a surprise that it was the daughter character from the book.
I liked that the guy was expecting. I liked that the guy was, expecting his punishment and willing to face his punishment. Right, like he didn't burn the painting and run out of the house or anything like that. He was like, well,
he would accept that it was the only thing. It was only right.
Exactly.
So he was sitting there waiting to be punished.
Yeah.
Well, and then you wondered if he had not come to that realization, was there kind of a Schrodinger's cat under the brown wrapper? Like, if he had not finally accepted and taken on his guilt, I guess, about what he did, would he have opened it up and it would have been the rapist?
Wow.
I feel bad for that cat that's got to hang out with that rapist forever in his box now.
He passed the test, maybe. He passed Melody's test.
Maybe he's dead.
So he gets it open. It's Nicole. The feeling was gone. First he was relieved because it wasn't going to be the rapist. Then followed by an even greater sense of loss. A loss so terrible and final, meaning like he knows that he's truly lost his daughter. I guess feeling was gone, and then he's looking back. Excellent work.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, he kind of helped himself. Like he because it's all coming from him anyway. He's, like it kind of almost is a moral that hey, you can work stuff out on your own and you can get past it, even though it's at the expense of people in your life. But I think he thinks he won, right?
Yeah.
Well, he's not going crazy anymore, but he's still realized he's lost his daughter.
Yeah.
Well, and I kind of got the feeling like, did he just completely block her out of his memory? Like, did he not have a daughter from then on?
Yeah, the daughter he'd never had.
Because he felt that loss. It was like the moment where he was just letting go of her and letting her let go of him. So then does he just go on his merry way? And I don't know. It was almost like he got off a little light. But I guess if you lose your daughter, that's... But if he doesn't remember he lost his daughter, is my point.
I think this is a good. I mean, it did leave me with questions, but it also it leaves you thinking. What happened next, and that's always good, also.
Yeah.
Or later, at least. It would have been nice to have a little epilogue, but. Geez, I mean, pick a fun one next time.
Tough stories lately, yeah. Well, that was good. No final comments?
It just one thing it reminded me of was the whole time I was reading it, I was like, I kept thinking that I'd read it before with authors' characters coming to life. But there's a Stephen King short story which they did do a mini series based on called Umney's Last Case, where this hard-boiled detective like Raymond Chandler type comes down with cancer and he basically writes himself into his story. But in order for that to happen, he has to switch places, so his character comes into the real world. And they did the miniseries of William H. Macy. It was actually pretty good. But he's never gone to the bathroom before, and he thinks he's dying like the first time he craps his pants because in fiction that never happened. So there's all these little. It's poking fun at writing basically, but it did it was a good. It definitely reminded me of that, and that came out in Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which was in the late '80s. But yeah, I like poking fun at the genre at your creations.
Okay, I guess I'll wrap up. Thanks for joining me. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Check
It was
us out.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, ambassadorsofkingsgrave.wordpress.com as we continue our reviews of the earlier works by George R. R. Martin. And I guess Night Flyers is one of them we want to do, right? Night Flyers. I was put on the forum here.
For another downer, were we talking about Meat House Man at any
Yeah,
point?
Meat
Or
House
have we
Man I
kind
think
of,
is on the list for some point.
Yeah, it's on the list.
or when? Because were you going to be out of commission for quite a while? Like, should we pick an actual novel?
Yeah, I'm not going to be
another
able
novel to read.
to do until end of the month. I'll be back at the end of the month,
At the end of
July.
July. Oh, okay, that's not that long.
Do you need another podcast project, Amber? Is
God,
3
no.
in 24 hours not enough for you?
But my thought was that if we pick like an actual book that we can push it out until like end of August or something. But
I do have Armageddon Rag and Tough Voyaging, which I haven't read yet, but I will get to them at some point.
I think probably Dying of the Light is what we wanted to do.
I love that story.
Fits right into a sci-fi universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dying of the Light, Meat House Man. Those are the two. Meat House Man isn't a novel, but it's lengthy. So those two are probably good things to get through. And then Night Flyers. Night Flyers can be a standalone.
I actually do have to get going.
We're recording a podcast today, by the way, at 9 p.m. Pacific,
Oh, nice.
12 Eastern.
Oh,
Yeah,
the podcast?
Yeah, 2
Nice.
chapters.
Yeah, cool.
Everybody? Is Mimi going to be there?
No, probably not. If Mimi's not there, then we have room for a guest host if somebody wants to join us.
Well, we'll actually be recording our own podcast
At what time? Same
at
time?
9 o'clock Eastern. Yeah.
No, it's 9 o'clock Eastern. This is 9 Pacific.
Oh.
So you
Oh,
should have
God.
plenty of time.
That'll be 4 podcasts in 28 hours. I don't know if I can do that.
That's probably all you guys need to get into the what's
Yeah,
that
that's what
club
I'm
called?
saying. If you want to get into
Yeah.
the Triple Gold Club, this is your best chance because you never know when we
We'll
record.
be on Skype.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. My husband would be so happy.
Well, I
anyways,
definitely don't have time to reread the chapters between now and 9 o'clock.
they're not that long.
Mimi never
it'll get-
rereads them, so you should be fine.
We expect more of a guest, though.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
It's not the last 2 chapters. It's 2 before that.
Make us proud, Michael. Go ahead.
No, I'm at
Michael's
work,
already-
unfortunately.
he's already got the triple gold.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
know.
I'm just resting on my
If you wanted to get the
laurels
triple
now.
gold, this is your best chance. Because honestly, after this month or 2, it's going to be rare recording. So,
Well, good.
we'll be on.
We'll see. There'll be plenty to talk about once the Worlds of Ice and Fire come out. I'm sure. I foresee many episodes across all the mediums.
All right, see you later then.
See you guys
Yeah.
later.
Take it easy.
Thanks, guys.
Hope it doesn't go on Darkling plane.
Yes. Let me know if you need the file, but mine seems to be here.
I mean, is there any chance that you guys are going to be anywhere in his vicinity at Comic-Con?
Yeah, I think he has a signing table, so I'll take some stuff there to get signed if I get in. I think there's like a lottery or something to get tickets to get signing because he can't sign everything.
Yeah.
But I'll take a couple of books with me, and he has a panel and stuff, so I'll go to that.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
I think I might give him the second art book if I do actually
Nice.
get to see
Oh
it.
yeah.
Because he has the first
Yeah.
dates for the 2 works.
Portraits of His Children is 86.
86. Okay. What about Remembering Melody? I think he says he wrote it around 1979. It's in the. Is everyone here?
I'm here, but it looks like maybe Amber and Greg aren't quite.
Alright, let me just check something here. I want to see when George is living with roommates.
Yeah.
It's,
Hello?
Hey.
Oh,
Hi.
George saying his wedding song was "Bridge Over Troubled Waters." Maybe we should have taken that as a clue.
Aw.
I like the way he does his autobiography. It's like this kind of
Yeah, me too. You get to learn all about him as you work your way through the books or the short stories.
I wonder if he would be quite so honest now. with his meteoric rise in fame.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you didn't have to write all this info here. This is stuff on his website. You can take it off.
Oh yeah, that's.
All right, so we're all here.
I am.
Oh, Greg dropped off. I think. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't think Greg is.
Try one more time. George would sell his books at old cons. He'd just take his books to the con and sell them.
I got to take my stuff to the. I really want him to sign some of my like Tough Voyager. I mean, I have a signed Tough.
Yeah.
And a signed Dying of the Light, but like I want to get like my Dreamsongs and the Hedge Knight ones signed too.
All right. So who's recording?
What's that?
Who's recording?
I should be.
I've got one going.
Good. And was Melody actually released in '79? Do we know when it was released?
It was. I wrote it down somewhere. Was it 81? Is that the Twilight Zone magazine 81, or was it before that? That's what it says in the contents here.
Yeah, it looks like it. I guess it took some time to find somewhere that would. Oh wow! It was actually done in an HBO series. Like they adapted into the Hitchhiker series.
Which one? Oh, Remembering Melody.
Yeah, Remembering Melody. I wonder if that's available somewhere. I'd like to see that. And there's two adaptations, a student film as well. I guess we'll mention that at the end of the first review. All right, are we looking good to start here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
All right, episode 40. All right, here we go.